All right, everybody, moving on to the second in this trilogy of films, which is why this is two-thirds Found Footage Friday. This is 2000's Book of Shadows, Blair Witch 2, directed by Joe Berlinger. And this is a movie that I've mentioned a few times on the channel that I've wanted to talk about since I first started this channel. Because love it or hate it, as most people seem to hate this movie, ever since it came out, this is one of my most watched movies, pretty much in general, like ever. Like when this movie first came out, even after everything I just said in the last video about the original, just, I don't know, something about this movie just really stuck with me. And I watched it many, 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 many times after it first came out. And this movie, I think, is a brilliant example of how studios fuck with films. And also just like expectations for sequels also. Like I said in the last video, like this movie was so hyped, the first one, when it first came out. And it caused such a huge like earthquake in the horror society with how big it actually became, that when you make a sequel to something like that, it's all up in the air. Because I've said it before, some people, when they want a sequel, they want something different, and then when they get something different, it turns out being, oh, this is too different, I didn't want this, like I wanted closer to the original. or they want something in a sequel close to the original, and then they get something totally different, and the same thing. Like you can't satisfy everybody for sequels, especially for a movie that was as big as the Blair Witch Project. Now with the studio fuckery and everything, they had Berlinger add in a bunch of scenes that make no sense for this movie. I actually, when I rewatched this Friday night, this is Friday right now. So for me, it's Found Footage Friday, like I said in the last video. My Wi-Fi is not working. It's been out for hours now today. So I got someone coming Sunday to fix it. And I don't know if I'll be able to get this up until then. So like in the past, on certain Found Footage Fridays, it's now self-tape Saturday or Sunday, whenever this is up. But they made him add in all the scenes with the killings and stuff, and like all the gore scenes that happened before the end, all like the parts of the interviews with Jeff and Steven and Kim and that you see before the end scene, like all that was not supposed to be there. Like the studio made him, he basically went out and filmed these scenes in his backyard, like after filming wrapped and everything. So like he was forced by the studio to make those decisions, which bring the film down, absolutely. But I saw years ago, I saw a fan edit on some website, I forgot where it was, but it was a fan edit of somebody following the director's original vision and taking those scenes out and changing like the beginning song that was supposed to be Frank Sinatra's Witchcraft, but they turned it into, Marilyn Manson. And just from the feel alone of seeing the movie that way, like the way it was supposed to be seen, makes this movie even better for me than when I already adore this movie. But I watched a fan edit tonight, and I've ended up finding a new one, and it just adds so much to the movie. Like just without all that studio stuff added in, like it really makes this movie even better than I think it already is. But just the whole concept too for the sequel and stuff of not just being kids in the woods again, getting lost. Like it's a whole commentary on the first movie's phenomenon and everything, and like questioning its roots of people believing it was real and flocking to this town in Maryland, in Burkittsville, and just wanting to see something, wanting to see the witch, or like believe in that this was real and everything. And just, it's very meta in a way, like that kind of like Grave Encounters too. But Grave Encounters 2 just doesn't work for me. If like I made a video on that, it's all right. It's just it's I love the first one. It's one of my favorite found footage movies ever. But this one just does this whole concept of questioning the first movie like a lot better for me than the other one does. Then we have the opening TV shows talking about the Blair Witch Project and everything, and all the interviews and people saying, "Oh, it scared me to death" and everything, and seeing just how big this thing became. And then we get Sheriff Craven's, because this whole movie now is a dramatization. Did I say that right? Dramatization. All right, that's better. Of actual events that were supposed to take place, and what we're seeing is it play out fictionally in front of our eyes, but this is supposedly what happened in the events of this movie. So we have Sheriff Craven's, which is a nice little nod to Wes Craven, and then, like I said, the beginning credits should have all those gore kill scenes taken out, and Frank Sinatra's Witchcraft playing instead of Marilyn Manson. So you just take all those gore scenes that we see until the end of this movie and just delete them out of our minds. Like, that's what you gotta do watching this movie. Like, after the first 5-6 times watching this movie, I kind of just don't even notice them anymore, just because I know how this movie was supposed to be. And that's the whole thing there, is that if you're willing to do that, or if you could do that, like, if you just flat out don't like this movie, you're not gonna like this movie. Like, that's just how it is, and there's a reason why this movie's hated on so much. But for me, it just works so well as like a psychological dive into these people's minds getting taken over and controlled by this supposed witch. And like I said in the last video, like, I love all the lore and mythos and stuff around the Blair Witch, like the Rustin Parr stuff, the Coffin Rock stuff, the whole thing with Ellie Kedward. I love the lore behind the Blair Witch Project. I just don't care for the actual film itself. But since this like expands on a lot of that lore, I don't know, it just works so well for me as like a psychological unraveling, and like group hysteria and stuff, which Steven is doing his old book on with Tristan and everything. Like, and just the characters in this movie, like, I love all of them. Like, they're so memorable to me. Like Jeff being like the one who's capitalizing on this whole phenomena of the first Blair Witch Project and selling all the items online and making money and everything. And you have like Kim is the one who just thought the movie was cool. And then you have Steven and Tristan, who are like the ones who were like hardcore questioners. Like, one's a real hardcore skeptic, and one's someone who believes that this has to originate in some form of truth. Then you have Erica, who represents the actual Wiccan community and everything. Like, all the characters are so memorable to me in this movie. And let's see. Yeah, and also all the scenes that they forced in there of like early interrogation scenes and stuff with the three of them. Delete. Like, just delete that shit right out too. Because that one, just none of that belongs, like, in this movie. Like I said, after so many times seeing this movie and loving this movie so much, that I just automatically tune out during things like that. 1 second, having some coffee. Delicious. Alright, so like the whole night scene into next morning scene is fucking awesome. Like, the whole scene with them partying and everything, and talking and discussing different things, and then like even like what I just said, like Steven pointing out that everyone that's there is obsessed with the Blair Witch, like for their own reasons and everything. And just like the whole like bond all of them form, like they all have good chemistry in this movie, the actors, which is always a good thing. And it's a good looking movie too, like cinematography wise and everything. I think it's a very good looking movie just to look at. Like, it looks very well. It looks very well. It looks very well done. That owl looks so fake though. Like the one in the when it's nighttime and stuff, after, and when Kim is laying on the grave and she looks up and sees the owl. That's such a bad owl, man. I say that every time. I say, oh man, I don't know why they used an owl that looks so fake like that. The owls are not what they seem, for any other Twin Peaks fans out there. Then we have Tristan drowning the baby. She's pregnant and stuff, and she goes into the water and everything, and then the blood comes out of the water. Like, is that what actually happened? Because they make it seem like it's a dream she had, but I think it actually happened, and that she was taken over by the witch, and that's what she ended up doing. She ended up killing the baby because the witch kills children, like Stephen reminds us later in the movie. But the great thing about this movie is you can look at it from two different ways. Like, did Tristan actually get possessed by the witch, or the woods, or whatever it is, and control them and make them go kill the tourists and everything? Or were they just delusional? Like, was it just group hysteria? Like, exactly what Steven's saying about his book and everything, and the research that him and Tristan are doing. That he thinks that this all stems from group hysteria, group delusion. So, like, did this really happen because of a witch, or did these people just fucking go crazy? Like, it's really awesome to be able to think of it that way. And I think Berlinger did such a good job with that. And just most of the acting, like, it's fine for me. Like, it's good to even great at times, but like there is some overacting from most of them at some point, especially like Kim's line that always takes me out of movies, like when the next morning when everything's shredded, all the paperwork and stuff, and um, they ask Kim, and she's like, "The tapes are here," and then they're like, "Where? You see them?" And she says, "In my mind, I see them." Like it's just something about the way she says it, man. Like, but it's so bad. Like, it's like overacting like crazy, and it takes me right out of that scene every single time. But like at this point, like nothing huge or anything, but I don't know. That's just what it does. And then we have the hospital shot of Eileen Treagle, the who the witch was supposed to drown or taken underwater or something back in the legend and everything. Like, as people say, and there's a video online from years and years ago from Good Bad Flicks that talks all about this movie and all the like S-reverse stuff, all the reverse like puzzle like words and everything they put throughout this movie on the DVD and everything. Like, talks all about that, and like people were complaining about this movie because it has nothing to do with the Blair Witch, but like they say in that video, like it has everything to do with the Blair Witch. So, like, we have Rustin Parr give his little line, like the old man, who is saying Rustin Parr's line in the supermarket when Kim goes there and meets Peggy and everything. And like there's so much Coffin Rock and everything being the Rustin Parr ruins. Like, this movie has so much to do with the original movie. Like, I don't know why people thought this was such a huge departure from the first movie. The whole thing with Coffin Rock, and the what the hell did I even write here? Oh, okay. When they were like explaining Coffin Rock, like in this fan edit I was watching, they don't have the gore scenes, like, but instead of just being taken out, they showed like text of like a book, because that's one thing I'll admit right off the bat, like, the title is so stupid for this movie, and that's another thing that the studios added: Book of Shadows. There is no book in this whole fucking movie. Like, there's no Book of Shadows, so I don't know what that means, but there is none of that. And in the fan edit, they actually had like where the gore scenes would be when they were talking about what happened at Coffin Rock. Because I mean, some of these shots that they use too, like you can tell like that it's Erica's back, like she has a tattoo there and stuff, and you can tell because dude, look at that body on her, like it is fucking stupid. Like she is so gorgeous in this movie, Erica, and you could tell that it's her. So like that's another thing that's so stupid about the studio making him add those scenes in. But like they didn't have that. They had like text from a book and had like the symbol of the stick men or whatever, and then like some other stuff. So like they even added that in, like whoever made that fan edit, just to make it less stupid, which I highly enjoy. Um, the whole table scene with Erica and Steven and stuff, and like them both having like what seems like a dual delusion. The both of them are having this, right? Because they both like look down and stuff afterwards, and like they both saw what happened. So I'm guessing that both of them had this delusion of like her giving him the massage, and then they start making out, and then she like fucking like rips his stomach and like where the scars are, or not the scars, but like the symbols. And then they both just like come out of it, and they're both like looking down and confused. So I'm guessing they both had that delusion. And then the whole Erica's we brought something back with us, and like freaking out with Kim and stuff, and saying like that's showing her the symbols on her and saying it's the pagan alphabet, and it means you've been touched by a witch, and just all of that. Like, it's so good, man. Like, how does someone not like this movie? Like, I just don't get it. And then when Kim goes to get beer, like I said earlier, and you see the old man that's been there for like 2 days now in this movie, because we see him right at the beginning when they go in to get beer. So he's been down there for like 2-3 days, and he says, "I'm finished now." So it plays into the whole Rustin Parr thing, and then she goes up and she meets Peggy and has the whole fucking conversation with her and stuff, and Peggy's like, "You're with the witch people, I don't want you here." And then she says the clever little thing when she flicks her name tag and it says Peggy. And later on, like near the end of the movie, when Tristan is like acting like the witch and everything, like before we see the footage at the end, like what we see on film, like Tristan flicks Kim and it says Kimmy. So like just that little detail, like I've always loved that about this movie. I don't know, just having that little name tag flick, like be in the movie like 2-3 times, like it gets referenced to, which is pretty cool. I really like that. And then with Kim seeing the kids that Rustin Parr killed and then crashing the van just a little bit, then could you imagine like being Kim, like the one who just crashed it just a little bit and just like busted just the fender up in her eyes, and then the next morning they look and it's like completely totaled. Like, dude, that's so fucking scary. Like, just the thought of that. Because I've said in, like, my Grave Encounters video and stuff that, like, my biggest fear probably is reality just completely distorting around you and changing, and there's nothing you can do about it. Like, that's some scary shit. And just seeing, like, the van, like, completely destroyed, and, like, how did I even drive it back like that? It definitely wasn't like that. That's fucking weird shit, man. Like, really fucks with your mind. And then Erica disappearing, and then they make the phone call to the dad, and the dad said that the minister and the wife, they never had any children, and like he's like, no, I know they disowned her because she's a witch, and they're like, no, they never had any kids. So like in that moment, dude, like what would you think? Like I'd be thinking like, she's a fucking ghost or a fucking witch, or like she's the witch. Like what the hell's going on? Like even if she did just give a fake name and everything, or like was that whole phone call like just put in their minds by the witch, and like they didn't even have that phone call, because we see on the videotape at the end that Jeff was putting her body in the closet. So there's so many layers to this movie that at least from when I watch it, like I don't know how anybody doesn't like this movie, man. I mean, I do, like absolutely, but I don't know. There's just something about this movie that just hits me so much better than the first movie, like in 100 different ways, which is like blasphemy. I know, like I said, but I don't know, man. Everyone sees movies differently. And then like the whole thing with the bridge falling apart and breaking, and Tristan not helping Steven, and then him getting lifted up and everything, and he hears Erica and stuff say like, you know who it is and what you have to do, and then like it turns into the girl again, Eileen Treacle, and like she's repeats the line. It's a creepy fucking scene, like very well done. And then the whole thing with the files, like the police files and stuff, like that Kim finds in Jeff's drawer, it's the same exact files in the end that the cops have. So is that just part of the delusion and part of like I said, either like their group delusion or something the witch put in their minds and everything, like kind of like foreshadowing of what was going to happen to them. I don't know. Like it's they plant those there, but how would Jeff have gotten those? Like I don't know. That always just to me was the witch fucking with them because they're the exact same files that the cops have at the end, and then Craven's calling and stuff, and I love when he answers. It's just like, "Fuck off, no one's home." Like I used to quote this movie all the time. Like not as much like nowadays, but there's a time I used to answer like that. Like this movie has so many like quotable lines in it. And then like the whole thing with backwards and stuff, which yeah is a little hit on the nose, like hit just backwards. It's not that creative, but it still works somehow. Like we have Eileen Treagle, the vision that Tristan has in the hospital, walking backwards, and Erica going around the tree backwards, and like so it all like makes sense in a way. Like it works out. Like I said, not the most creative thing, but then they do the keystrokes backwards, which is just that's weird too. But let's go with it. And they see all the missing hours and stuff, and that whole video of the missing hours is awesome. Like I love that whole sequence of them just like fucking partying and like a big orgy it seems like, and like they're all drunk and stoned out of their minds, and like with just the weird music which like just fits it real well, like with that whole scene, and like Erica with the skull between her legs, and like Tristan's whole thing with that fake owl that looks so ridiculous. Come on, really? Like they couldn't have gotten a better owl, like a prop, like anything better than that. But like everything besides that is like so good in that whole little missing hours sequence. Then they chase after Tristan and everything and try to get her to admit that she's the witch, and you know she's acting like the fucking witch, bro. Like hardcore. And then they end up doing the little flicky thing again on Kim, and Steven ends up accidentally, as he says, you know, knocking her off, and she ends up hanging to death and dying. Then the whole ending of this movie, I don't know if this is maybe what made this movie stick with me so well, like when I first saw it when it came out, but just I think the acting is phenomenal at the end of this movie, like especially from Steven, like with his whole "that's fucking bullshit" and like looking at the security cameras and everything, like the footage is so good to me. Like I don't know, and it fucks with your mind like the first time you see that, especially like I said, like watching the fan edit that I watched and having all the previous scenes taken out that shouldn't be there and just added to the end here and stuff make it so much better. Like this is one movie I pray we get a director's cut one day for, like 100%, because I would love there to be an actual official director's cut of this movie. Like I think people would appreciate it more if they could see it without all the stupid bullshit that the studio threw in my opinion. But we'll see. Hopefully one day we get one. But I mean, we're getting a fucking sequel to The Mutilator from 1984, one of my favorite slasher films in the 80s, supposedly this year or next year, like 40 years later. So if we can get a sequel to The Mutilator, we can most likely get a director's cut for Book of Shadows, Blair Witch 2. And just showing what actually happened, and that plays back to that night of Jeff saying, you know, to Kim that, you know, video never lies and film does though. So like we see that this whole film in the end and stuff, everything that we thought happened was a lie, and then we see the video and just some of the shit in this video, man, like the way that like Tristan is like a little too like petrified and everything, like it's just like turns it the night just even more, that she seems so petrified and everything, that it's not like it's just like them going after saying, no, we think you're the witch, or we think you killed Erica and stuff. It's like it's like a lynch mob going after her, the way they really acted. So like I don't know. I feel like they went a little over the top with it just to like purposely like stick it to them and be like, yeah, this is how you actually were, and like it's like way over the top and make them look like extra crazy. Like I love that about the ending, and like with Kim stabbing Peggy and everything, and her saying like I didn't do that, and then Jeff like how like his the footage of him after putting Erica in the closet, like looks up at the camera, and like Jeff already we know had problems with, like from being in an institution and stuff, and like he just likes to like stop it like when he's like looking at himself on the footage because it's like not how it happened in their minds, and then just the whole thing with Steven when he throws Tristan off the edge and she hangs, and he says fucking witch, like that's so fucked up, that's so fucking crazy. Imagine seeing yourself saying that about your girlfriend like on videotape in a police station, like being charged with murder. Like that's gotta be the worst. Than him just like saying like somebody fucked with that tape and like this is bullshit. Like so good, man. Like that's such a good ending. That's such a great. It's such a great movie, in my opinion. Like, but hey, I have not the best taste, I guess, sometimes with certain movies, because there are certain movies, like I said, with Scream. I don't like Scream either, and I just never cared for the first Blair Witch. Like I respect the hell out of it. I think, like I said, I did a whole video on it, so just watch that if that's what you want to do. But we'll have the third one, the Blair Witch from 2016, up and right after this one. All right, guys, take care.